Welcome to this class. In it, we will learn how to customize the grid and how to perform an SQL query using the query component. Let's start by testing our form again. You may notice that in the grid of the professor form, only the name and hire date are displayed. Let's analyze why only these options appear and how to customize this grid. First, let's analyze why our grid only shows these fields. Click on our Professor Business object. Click on the Form tab, then the Grid tab. You will see that we only have these objects in our grid. The reason for this is that in the Professor Business object, there are no fields that we had to customize the model in the Professor form. Those fields belong to the Person Business object. So, how do I customize my grid? I want to see other names besides the hire date and name. To do this, go to the Professor form, click on the CRUD page, and in the HTML sidebar, you will see the code of this page. This page is what renders our form. If you observe, there is an Angular directive that tells us that the headers are called headers. By default, if you don't make any configuration, it will render the fields that you chose for the grid when you created the form in the Business object. To customize the grid, click on the lateral tab called Controller. Here, to save us time, I will paste a ready-made code. This code is in AngularJS, and our system is based on AngularJS. Scope is an AngularJS directive, and the name headers is because the system is calling headers as headers. So, I am modifying the headers variable. I am saying that it is an array, meaning a set of objects. These objects have a title, which is the name I want in the column of my grid. And it has a field that comes from the business object I am referring to. The name field comes from the relationship pessoas.ponto-nome, the date of birth field comes from the relationship pessoas.ponto-data de nascimento, and the hire date field comes from the Professor Business object itself. If the object in the array belongs to the Professor Business object itself, you only need to put its name as it appears in the business object, without the need to include the relationship. Once saved, let's test our page. Click on Test our Pagina, Test Page, Pagina de CRUD, CRUD page, and now our grid is properly customized. Now, let's create the form for the course offering business object. Click on the Business object, then click on the Form tab, and select the Grid tab. Click on Select Fields. The procedure is similar to creating the previous forms. You select the desired fields for the grid, arrange them as you want, and do the same for the fields in the screen design. Once you are satisfied with the configurations, click on Save. Now that our form is created, let's test it. Click on Test Page, and then CRUD page. Let's create a course offering. Enter the year in effect. As it is a string, you have to type the year. For the semester field, we created a list of values, so you can choose from the items in our list. For the minimum grade field, we choose to enter the grade 7. As it is a big decimal, it has 2 decimal places after the integer. Note that the course and discipline fields have data search components because they are relationships. I want to draw your attention to the fact that the professor field is a select instead of a data search, even though it is also a relationship. I will explain how this was done a little later. Let's create another course offering, repeating the same procedures, selecting and entering information in each of the fields. Now, I will show you how I made the professor field a select instead of a data search. For this, we will learn how to create a query component. Click on Management in the lateral menu and then click on Query Component. Click on Create. I'll name this query component OpBarData Professor, and in the description I'll repeat the same thing. For the project, select the project we are working on, which in this case is College Videos. Select the database connection, which is the same as our project, Video Training Creation. Here, I'll write my SQL command. Let me explain the command. I am selecting the professor table, giving it an alias A. I am making an inner join with the person table, giving it an alias P. I am telling it to join where p.id is equal to a.id. Finally, I am asking for this query to be ordered by p.name, which is the name column in the person table. Now, we need to add the columns from the tables, or in this case, our business objects that are stored in the database as tables. Click on Add. First, we add the a.id column, which is the ID column of the professor table. The attribute name and description will be ID, and the type is big integer. Click on Save. Now, let's add another column, which will be p.name, as we gave the alias p to the person table. The attribute name and description will be name, and it is a field of type string. Click on Save. Before clicking on Save again, we need to check the View as Lookup option. In the column or expression for the key field, select ID. In the column or expression for the description field, select name. Click on Save. Now, where will we use this query component? This query component will be used in our form. In our form, I will show you how we will make use of the query component. If we add an item from the lateral menu and add it to our form, choosing any relationship, the component will come as a data search. Let's load our form again, just to review the concept of the data search component. This component is a type that when I type a letter inside it, it will search the database in the column to which the relationship refers. Depending on the situation, it may or may not be advantageous to have a data search. If you have few professors, it may be more useful to use a lookup instead of a data search. Remember that the performance of the lookup is better because it will not search for all data in the column that contains a certain letter. It will bring the search in the column determined by the created SQL command and bring the data ordered as in the command. Now, let's delete the component we just inserted and save our form again. I will show you the steps to create a lookup instead. Instead of choosing the custom component from the lateral menu, scroll down and select the lookup component and drag it to the desired row. With the component selected, in the options bar on the right, in the label field, put the name of your field. In our case, it will be Professor. In the lookup field, just select what we just created, the opbar data, Professor. In the model field, insert the model relative to the field. These were the steps I took to create my professor field as a lookup. Always remember to save your changes.